There we go. I'll hand it over to you, Britt. Tell me when you want to share the screen. I'll keep letting people in.
Thank you, Derek. First off, thank you everybody for letting me tie for you tonight. I've been watching for a while, so it's nice to be in front of the vise for once. Today is our Thanksgiving, so I have the day off of work, which is the only reason I'm working. Usually I'm at work meetings. Let's start. So tonight I'm going to be tying some Western Trout Flies, just more or less my favorite patterns that I like to fish out here. I live in Idaho, so we've got lots of rivers here. So I put together a little PowerPoint to kind of give a frame of reference as to where we fish, how we fish. I won't go into a lot of detail about the techniques, but it'll give you an idea of what our rivers look like, and which speaks a lot to how our flies are tied. And with y'all being over in the UK mostly, I didn't figure you know probably too much about Idaho. So, I'll go ahead and share my screen now. If anybody has questions, just holler out and I'll do my best to answer them.
Do you want me to click on share screen?
Let me check. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Hang on.
So,
what do I click on? Share?
Oh, don't.
There we go.
Oh, so you're screen sharing now.
Oh, bike.
That's not my bike.
No,
That's the wrong one, Derek.
what have I done wrong?
Just glad it's a bike.
That's a mighty nice fly you tied there.
Hang on, let's try stop screen share. Right, if I go to the little icon down there.
I was an English Harley.
One participant can share at a time. There we go. Multiple, there we go. So you should be able to do it now, Brett.
Let me check. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Get it up.
Oh, that's better.
I like it.
I don't know how to operate it worth a damn. So,
Could be down the left-hand side usually.
can you see that?
It's a nice looking river.
Okay, you can see it. Okay.
We can see the presentation there, but it's not in like presentation mode. There you go.
Okay, perfect.
And curious, Britt, that fly that was on your desktop, what's the name of that one?
I named it Cold Springs.
Okay.
I tied it for Brian. He was bitching because I hadn't tied him a fancy fly yet. So
So it's an original.
yeah, I wanted to try a Delta wing, which is kind of so I did that, and it's Cold Springs is one of our favorite camping spots. So
Cool.
that's how we pulled it, and it's the only one, and I'll never tie it again.
Well, how long did that take you?
No, it took me just one full day just to marry the wings. There are 3 on top, 3 on bottom, and then same on the back side. So it took all day just to marry the wings.
Wow.
That's at it. So, but it was fun, and I did it, and probably never do it again. So, like I said, I live in Idaho, so you might wonder, where is Idaho? A lot of people don't really know where Idaho is. Even people that live in the US don't know where it is, which is fine. They can just stay.
I'll show you Michigan, isn't it?
So we're up in the one in red is Idaho. So we're in the inland Northwest. We're surrounded by Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. So we're kind of right in the middle of a lot of really good fishing opportunities. Most people think of Idaho, they think of Idaho potatoes. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK, but anywhere in the US, they just Idaho potatoes, that's all they think of, which again, that's fine. We have a lot more than that though. The southern part of the state is mostly potato fields, but the central and northern parts of the state are very different. We've got 2 rivers. We have spring creeks, which are their source is a spring, which gives us more uniform water levels and temperatures. And then they're generally very nutrient dense. So lots of aquatic plant growth, insects, that sort of thing. We have a few of them here. It's not the majority though. This is a photo from the Henry's Fork of the Snake River, which is the Railroad Ranch section, is the Spring Creek section of it. It's quite world renowned. The fish there are said to have PhDs, and I believe every bit of it. We go there once a year, usually. And it's just an amazing history. We also have silver creek, which is similar. I've not fished it yet though, but it has quite epic passages like that. Just a few photos from down on the railroad. Just a picture of a weed mat where we had, I mean, there was just thousands of mayflies on this weed mat. And I mean, they weren't even all the same kind. They were different kinds, different stages. So when you're fishing for them, you literally sit on the bank and wait for risers. And the hatches are quite prolific. And once you do see fish rising, it's really a game of figuring out which, because a lot of them will be hatching off at the same time. So it's a matter of figuring out which they're going after, specific, type of mayfly, and then which life stage they're keyed in on as well. And one fish may be on one where another fish may be on another. So it's pretty frustrating sometimes, but that's what we go there for. Also, the weather changes from beautiful to hailing and crazy all in 5 minutes. It's in a kind of a valley, caldera actually, and so the storms tend to just bounce around in it. And also from time to time you'll see a grizzly bear crossing the river, which is always fun and makes you stay on your toes a bit. Primarily, we have freestone streams, which is what I'm going to be talking about mainly tonight and pine flies for. Freestone streams are ones that form from snow melts and tributaries, and they just kind of add up over distance from that snow melt. So it melts up in the mountains, goes to a creek goes to bigger creek, and it just compounds as it goes. Because of that, we have really large fluctuations on our water level based on that snow melt. If we have a good snow year, we have a lot of runoff. If we don't have a good snow year, then it's not as much. But in spring, when it's all melting, it's crazy. By August, September, it's low and usually pretty warm because we just don't have any water left. Here's an example of a boulder field that I really enjoy fishing in the fall when the water levels have dropped. This is a picture of it in June, when it wasn't even the peak of runoff, so it would still be a little bit more than that. But that's kind of an example of the difference.
Wow.
Just what was that?
I just said wow.
And danger. If not careful, you'll get swept down. This is just a photo I took from the same vantage point. The one on the left would have been early September. The one on the right would have been June. So not the peak of runoff and not the lowest it gets either. So just to show a bit of the difference. Literally, when you're fishing the different seasons, you're almost fishing an entirely different river. And each with that amount of water, boulders move, trees move. So it's always a kind of part of it, just figuring out when you get out there the first time for the year, what's changed, where there are snow slides, is that new rock piles in. So it's very ever changing. A lot of the roads that follow the river are quite a ways above the river. So we've got quite a jaunt to get down to it. A lot of the roads are a single lane with turnouts, just dirt road. Generally, if you can find a spot that's more difficult to get down, the better the fishing food, because most people are bothered with it. Here's just very bouldery.
Can I interrupt a minute, Britt? If all you guys mute yourselves, the quality of the Brit sound will improve. Sorry, Britt.
Oh, you're fine. Am I talking loud enough? I'm very soft spoken, so it's hard sometimes.
No, somebody else has got their mic on.
So again, just kind of an example of some of the river, generally a pretty fast current out in the middle with boulders all over, soft edges on the sides. And the fish really could be anywhere in there. They like to hang out on the sides, but we very often fish out in that rough stuff, which is why a lot of our gentleman on the left is actually Thomas. He owns Nature Spirit, a company Omac Lake, distributes materials. They're about an hour and a half upriver from us, so it's not uncommon with them or meet from time to time. Just another example on the left is kind of one of the bigger rivers. That's the main fork of the Clearwater. And so this would be what all of the tributaries run into. On the upper right, excuse me, is just a small creek that we like to walk up into. So much smaller, a little bit more intimate. And then down below, I think that's during runoff, just an example, the water again. As far as bugs go, we have quite a few mayflies, stoneflies, and caddis, and terrestrials. We don't get the real prolific hatches like the spring creeks do. They tend to just get these amazing hatches. Ours are more kind of sporadic. We've got, like I said, a minute. So like on the upper left, we've got drakes, stoneflies. To the right, that's a golden stone hatch. That is the one hatch that we actually got to witness. It was lightning out, so we couldn't fish. But all of these stoneflies just started crawling out of the water all over camp. So we got to sit there and watch them as they hatched. It's pretty cool to finally witness something like that. Probably our main meal for the trout are caddis, granums on the left, just small caddis. I got to a beach here in front of camp, and I thought it was a bunch of sticks on the edge, and I walked up and they were all moving. And I picked a bunch up, and sure as hell, they were all caddis, just little itty bitty granums. And so we have tons of those. And then my favorite caddis is our October caddis, which is on the right. They're quite large, as you can see based on my thumbnail, my thumb, and they're cased caddis as well. So they build their homes out of rocks and sticks in the river. On the upper right, picture those. We call them periwinkles, is the name we give them, their cases. And I like to collect them. But so that's probably my favorite aquatic bug we have. It's just they're really fun to fish in the fall. They hatch in the fall. We also have smaller stoneflies like squala, terrestrial like grasshoppers, beetles, sort of thing. The center here is an example of that periwinkle with the caddis removed from it to give you an idea of the size. Probably the largest one I've ever found, and I killed him, of course. Then on the lower right, we've got a golden stonefly and just some salmon on the top. So we've got quite a bit of different hatches, but they're very sporadic, like I said. So fishing any of those flies, kind of when nothing's hatching specific, you've got pretty good odds of connecting with something. As far as our fish go on the freestone streams, this is a West Slope cutthroat trout. This is a pretty typical looking cutthroat trout. They're given their name based on that red-orange cut along the lower jaw. That's where they get the cutthroat name from. As to the fall, they start kind of getting their spawning colors on. So just a few examples of those. Beautiful fish. They're wild. Most of our rivers, if you get a 12 to 14 inch fish, I'd say that's average. 16 to 18, you're doing better. I've been told there's 20-inch ones in there. I've been fishing it since 2012 and I've yet to see one. I've come close, but I've never seen one hit the 20-inch mark. We also have kokanee, the top right, or top left, sorry. Apparently I'm dyslexic today. The top left is a kokanee, which is a landlocked salmon. They're just itty bitty, 6 to 8 inches. On the lower left here, we've got whitefish, which at first glance, they look somewhat similar in their coloring to grayling, but they don't have the pretty fin. They're not near as fancy, but they're a native species to us. In the middle here, we have just a small cutthroat smolt, just to give you an idea of their coloring when they're younger. Just beautiful little gems, even when they're young. And on the right, we have a bull trout. This is a very small bull trout. They get much larger. They're actually a char, not a trout. And they're just massive predator fish. And so they get to be really large. A lot of people will streamer fish for them. And a number of times we've had them come up and chase the cutthroat that we had hooked on our line. A lot of our rivers are catch and release. Not all of them. I wish all of them were, but they're not. But this kind of goes to speaking of the catch and release and how it is effective. This fish was caught in about 15 feet apart, 2 years apart. I didn't realize it at the time that it was the same fish until we got home, and I said, gosh, I wonder, and I got to comparing the spots on it, and there's a couple really unique spots around behind that fin, and sure as shit, 2 years later we caught the exact same fish about 15 foot apart. And this is on a section of river that is not catch and release. We tried to get him the year after that, but we never did find him again. My guess is he probably went home in a frying pan. Another fishery that we have that I'm just going to touch on because it's become one of my most favorite fisheries is actually not in Idaho. It's in Washington, about 4 hours the other direction. It's called Omac Lake. It's on the Colville Indian Reservation, and it's an alkali lake, so it is salt water. There's inlets coming in, but there are no outlets, so the minerals just add up. It is stocked with Lahontan cutthroat, which is a strain of cutthroat from Pyramid Lake in Nevada. In Pyramid Lake, they get to be upwards of 20 pounds, which is a massive cutthroat. In Omac, if you catch a 5 to 8 pound one, you're doing good. But a 5 to 8 pound cutthroat any day, yes, please. It fishes well early in the spring, so it's kind of become our first outing for the spring season. Here's just a few examples of some of the fish that we've caught there. Just depending on if it's a female, a male, the coloring, they're just amazing fish, and they just cruise the edges, and so you can just sight fish to them, stripping streamers, or nymphs. We also strip chironomids to them, and it's just a pretty fun fishery. So the first fly I tie tonight will be one that we use there primarily. So the flies I'll be tying tonight are a couple dry flies, couple nymphs, and if we have time, I might tie a steelhead fly. We'll start with the beer can blue, which is the one that we use at Omac. Funny name, I get it. It's just a Carry Special imitation, or variation, sorry. And we named it Beer Can Blue just because the name of the beach we fish it at is Beer Can Beach. So there's that. Next, we'll tie the Butt Head Attractor, which also a kind of funny name. It's called the Butt Head just because it's got a hot spot for the back end and the front. We'll be tying a Tom Thumb, and then also a Beetle Bug Palmer. Then we'll be moving on to some nymphs, which will be the bird of prey, nymphs, wet flies, bird of prey, a shaky Beeley, a zog bug, and then we'll also be doing a Quigley's film Critic tonight. So I think that's about it. So hopefully that just kind of gives you an idea of the rivers that we fish and what we're fishing for. Again, a lot of the rivers are very fast, even once the water levels have come down. Cutthroat are very eager to take a dry fly, which is amazing. You can go subsurface for them, but generally you don't have to. So we fish a lot of big bushy dry flies so that they float well in the rapids. So with that, oh my gosh, my husband's on here. Goodness, I just noticed that.
Is he supposed to be working? Britt?
He is supposed to be working. He's sloughing off on county time, apparently.
How much
The
does it
whole-
cost you to fish there,
Paid
Brett?
really- Getting paid really well to slough off. What was that?
How much does it cost you to fish?
So I don't know how this works over there, but in the States, each state has their own state fishing license. So in Idaho, for a resident license, if you're not getting a steelhead or salmon permit, I'm gonna say it's maybe $30. But somewhere in there, not terrible. If you're out of state, so if you live in one of the other states or other countries, it is considerably more. It doesn't slow anybody down, being said. I want to say maybe it's $80 or $90 for a yearly license. If you're
And you can buy them for the week, Britt, still. I know when I used to fish the fork, I just buy the week, you know, just buy the week in Idaho and then buy them for the week.
I want to say they have a 3-day, a single day, a 3-day, or a 7-day.
That's
Because I don't ever buy them. I'm more familiar with the out of state
the
name.
the cost comparisons are exponential here versus the States. Yeah. Access to the water.
So the nice thing about here is most of the freestone streams, at least that we fish, are all public land for the most part. A lot of those pictures that I showed in the video were from the North Fork of the Clearwater. Don't tell anybody that. But literally, you've got probably between that, Kelly Creek, and the tributaries, you've probably got about 80 miles of public access. So even though we're seeing more and more people up there, there's still plenty of river for everybody. But it never fails. They're always in the hole I want to fish. But that is one nice thing about Idaho is we have a ton of public land that we're allowed to fish. Are there any questions on any of that? If not, I'll just jump into tying.
So when you're fishing Omac Lake, are you fishing from a float tube or are you fishing from the bank?
Well, on Omac, we've only fished from the bank. People do take boats out and float tubes. The problem is it's really windy generally. So the first year we fished it, we took them and it was so windy we didn't even bother. The second year we didn't take them and there was hardly any wind that whole weekend. Could have.
Of course.
There's not a ton of shore access. So there's 2 beaches, one on each end, that is open to non-tribal members to fish. So it's a pretty not known fishery, but it seems like there's more people finding out about it because of the internet, of course. So I think there's more people than there maybe used to be. But I think if you had a small boat or a non-windy day to where you could maybe hit some other shoreline, I think that would be in your favor.
And you're fishing with a sinking line or a floating line?
I've just been
Or
using
intermediate?
poly leaders to get down a little ways, just 5-foot poly leaders. Literally, you're maybe 5 foot out in the water, if that, and there's pretty shallow, and then it just drops down. And so you're just fishing over that ledge for the most part. And you just cast out over it, strip it in. I mean, you can watch these pods of fish come through. And so as you see one coming, you can kind of sense fish one. But it's a really neat fishery and not a lot of
Cool.
people take
Thanks.
advantage. You have to get a Colville
Tribal permit.
for it and vehicle access pass. So my guess is that it's not very expensive, but my guess is that prohibits a lot of people from, they just don't want to bother with it. But it's a pretty cool fishery. I call it our mini pyramid lake. So, right. Any other questions before I move on to the tying section?
I just want to ask you one about the vise. I believe you use a Norvice vise. Is that correct?
I do, yep.
What do you like best about the Norvice vise?
So first and foremost, the holding power of it. It drives me nuts when a hook slips. The whole point of a vise is to hold the hook. If it slips, that doesn't work for me. There's a lot of good vices though that do hold hooks. Let me switch into this real quick. I knew someone would ask. So right now I've just got the standard jaws in. So I'm just gonna put, this is a 1/0 salmon hook. Steelhead salmon hook. So I'm just gonna put that in.
Oh dear.
It's not going anywhere.
That's
Wow.
pretty tough.
So that's one of the reasons I just don't like when hooks slip. It drives me nuts. So the hook holding power is amazing. This may be able to help if I just leave that.
A lot more, doesn't it, than any other vise?
I don't know if I can back this up a bit. It might be a little blurry. So it's an inline rotary. It's a true inline rotary. When you put a hook in here, the center axis is right along the top of that shank. And when you put a hook in there with the shank coming right off the top, it's going to spin in line. So that gives us a lot of ways, different ways to apply materials. That lets us apply materials a little bit more with a uniform tension as we put materials on, things like that. It's also versatile in that we've got different jaw configurations. This is just the standard inline. For my salmon flies, I use the bigger ones. We've also come out with a shank jaw, which just comes out the center and the shank comes out right from the end for like game changers, intruder style flies. And then
If you haven't got the small ones with you, Brett, there's the small ones.
then there are just the small
Oh.
fine point jaws. And literally switching the jaws out is a matter of just loosening this tension, this nut right here, out. I forget what it's called. You just loosen that Allen key, they pop right out. So it's very quick to change if you need to. So I do like the versatility. It's made in the US, which of course I like because I live in the US. The customer service Tim and his team provide is amazing. It's always nice. And it's
Sadly,
pretty
the
much,
inventor died, didn't he, about 18 months ago?
Norm did pass away in, gosh, I think it was 2000. It's been 4 or 5 years now.
Is that
I'd have-
long? My God.
I have to look in my phone to be sure.
Can I interrupt, Brett?
Yeah.
The one thing I would say using a Norvice, which gets me, is the actual bobbins, because the vice is a system with the
Yes.
bobbins, and the way the bobbins work, when you get used to a bobbin, you won't go to anything else.
You're stealing my thunder.
Sorry, I'll shut up again.
You're fine.
Go stand
I
in
got
the
sick.
corner.
I'll just switch over to the other camera real quick. So like Pete said, the bobbins, it's kind of a system. And the bobbins can be used with a Norvice or without. But so anytime you are tying on a rotary vise, let me put a hook in real quick, that would be helpful. Generally, if you're tying on a rotary vise and actually using it as such, which most people don't do, anytime you go over to your bobbin rest, you're getting extra thread out and coming back. So you're constantly doing this hand over, winding it back up, reeling it back in. If I'm reeling something in, I want it to be a fish. I don't want it to be thread. So the bobbin actually has a clutch in the center here. And so it just brings it back in for you. You don't have to do this winding it up all the time. So
What kind is that again, Brett?
a Norvice auto bobbin.
Auto bobbin? Okay.
Um,
But you can use that bobbin with any vise as well, right?
you could use it with any device. Like if usually tell people I would give up my vise before I gave up my bobbin. There it is.
You have to load the spool on
Yeah,
the bobbin.
But I would give up the vise before I gave up the bobbin. It's a little bit of a learn once you get past that. Say you break your thread because of that clutch being in there, it'll just swoop it back through. So a little bit of a learning curve, but you learn real quick to just kind of clamp down on it. And
Do you have to load the bobbin with thread though?
you do, yep. So
Is there a trick to that, or is it a bind?
No.
Yeah,
and then there's an arbor.
yeah.
It goes in a drill. So
Oh, right.
It's so easy. It's brilliant.
very easy. And I mean, unless you are tying, although we got our Semperfly shipment in the other day and a ton of new thread, it took me a long time to get it all spooled up. But for your average tying, you might have to do it, once every little bit.
Yeah.
Literally, it takes 2 minutes, if that. So it's really not that big of a thing.
If the bobbins worry people, the way I tell them to start off with is to buy white thread and a load of permanent markers. And then you start tying with that. You can put the marker on if you need something extra color. And once you get used to the vice, you don't need to change. Oh, I've got hundreds here. You just, use them as you do. But the system, and it is a system, as Britt said, once you get used to it, you won't go back to anything else. I've got a law vice sat in the cupboard, never used it.
I've learned real quick, like some people see the light, some don't, and that's fine. I mean, there's so many good vices on the market. Just so many good ones that, it's nice we all have our options to use.
Sorry, Britt.
And what works for us. No, you're fine. And also it's what I learned on for the most part. So about a year into tying, I was watching Norm at a show and I got my first Norvice.
You fell for his smooth talking.
Ever since, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it's just fun to tie on.
Is the company still going?
Use some of the techniques that allow us to apply materials a little bit differently. I'll show you those as we tie tie those flies.
The
What was
company's
that?
still going, Britt.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Norm. So Norm passed away. Gosh, I think it was 2018.
Probably about 7 years ago, wasn't it?
Was it that long?
Quite some time ago. Let me get my phone.
Yeah. A chap called Tim O'Brien took it over. He made all the vices for Norman. He was the one in the engineer behind it in the workshops. So it had continuality all the way through.
I thought I had it as a note in here, but oh, he passed away May 13th of 2018. So he was the creator. He was an engineer, and he is the designer of it all. Tim O'Neill was the guy manufacturing, machining the parts for it for years before Norm passed away. And about a week before Norm passed, they did the deal, and Tim bought the company from him, and so now runs the company and also machines all the parts for it. So he's got a very tight quality controllability on it, since his shop is the one that actually machines all of it as well. Let's see. Yeah, so as we go through the flies, I'll kind of show some of the different techniques with it. That is why I like it. But and it's something that you could pass on to the next one, right?
It's great for making dubbing as well, isn't it?
Yes, you can make dubbing brushes with it. I'll show you my favorite peacock pearl with it. I love peacock pearl. Our fish love peacock pearl, so I'll show you how we do that with it. Yeah, it just gives us some different ways of applying materials, or making different materials work in different ways than a standard vise. There's really nothing quite like it out there. There's a rotary vices, but there's no any that really spin, and that spinning gives us some more options. Okay, any more questions, and we'll get into the tying.
One thing I'll add to what Britt said, and she's hit everything pretty near bang on, is that if you've got a real difficult hackle and it's not rolling, with a rotary vise like the Norvice, you can lay that hackle to get over that problem so easy, which you've got a job to do with a normal vise.
Thanks for that explanation, Britt.
Yeah. Then if anybody has like more in-depth questions, let me know, and I can always do a Zoom with you if you want more specifics. I don't necessarily want to turn this into a advertisement, so to speak, but that's kind of just some of the basics as to why I liked it. And my husband also now ties on one. He tied on another one for a long time. He's kind of didn't want to convert over, but he had rotator cuff surgery, and so it was very hard to do this for a very long time. And so once he had surgery, he switched to the Norvice, and by using the turning feature of it, or spinning feature, you're turning the hook shank as opposed to this, and so it really can be able to tie after that surgery. So
yeah, we work with wounded vets, and sometimes they need a one-handed vise, so that's very helpful, you know.
Right. So let's go over the camera. And just quick note, I just got my hand out of a cast last Thursday, and it is much stiffer than I thought it would be, so bear with me. And as Brian would tell you, I haven't exactly tied trout flies in a long time. I've been focused and down the rabbit hole of full dress classic salmon flies. And he would more than tell you that I haven't been pulling my weight as far as filling our trout boxes lately.
Just slightly out of focus, Britt.
So this is a newer camera.
There we go.
Manual focus. So depending, I might have to switch it up depending on the fly. It's very like specific.
Perfect.
How's
Perfect.
This first fly we're going to tie is that beer can blue. The name of it is literally just the beach name. So we didn't know what to call it, so that's what we called it. Beer Can Beach on Omac. So it's just a Carry Special variation. The Carry Special is a British Columbia Lake pattern. It was designed by a British Army colonel with the last name of Carey. It's questionable on what his first name was. It's up for debate, but some say it was Tom. Originally, it was tied with groundhog tail hairs for the tail and body, probably because that's what happened to be available. And then just black thread as a rib and saddle hackles from a ring neck. At one point, it was known as the monkey-faced Louise, and I have no idea why. Nobody seems to know why, but I feel like there's a story behind that. Over the years, people have done all sorts of variations using wool, chenille, that sort of thing. I'm going to be using Arex, just the classic streamer on a size 8. Most of these flies I'm tying tonight can be tied bigger, smaller, different colors. They're all pretty versatile. So very first off, I'm going to weight this one. I'm using just 015 lead-free wire. I tie them both weighted and not weighted. And then you'll see, depending on which it is, I'll change my thread color. So I'm just putting the wire through the eye of the hook. I've got my tension nut loosened. I'm just going to wind that.
Clever.
We'll break that off.
Clever.
And then
Clever.
I just break off with my thumbnail. And I want it to be in the center. If I wanted to have it more of a jigging sort of fashion, I could have it up towards the front of the hook, but we just want it on center as best we can. For thread, I'm just using Semperfli Classic Waxed in Red. And it's 8/0. You could use as big as this is, you could probably get away with 6/0. So, oops. Just gonna attach the thread. And then again, I've got my tension nut loose, so we can just kind of slip forward a bit. There we go. So I can just dress that hook shank, make a few dams kind of right in front and behind that wire so it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm just going to take my thread all the way to the rear. For the tail, we're just going to be using fibers from a peacock breast feather. You can get these in little packages of like 10 feathers to a package, or if you're lucky, you can find a whole breast. If anybody, has any ends on those, let me know, because I'd love to get another one. So I'm just going to pinch off some of these fibers. And then tie those there. I like to lift them up and wrap below them. It just kicks them up a little bit. No reason at all other than it looks a little bit sexier. Learned that from Dave Hughes. So the brows tied in. And then how many you put there is completely your preference, same as length. To be honest, I'm pretty sure the fish at Omac don't care. They're just hungry. Next up, we're going to be using some improvised straggle string in black and just some strong peacock pearl. This is going to be the body of the fly. I'm going to tie in that straggle string. Hair clips are an amazing thing. They're great for just holding materials out of your way. And then I'm just going to take a clump of peacock curl. So we all know peacock curl is inherently fragile. None of it's great. So I'm just going to rip those tips off. So we all know the different ways to kind of reinforce that, so to speak. A lot of times we'll add a rib, or we'll wrap it around our thread in hopes that, a fish's tooth won't completely decimate it. So I've tied that in right on top of that straggle string. I'm going to go ahead and throw a half hitch in. Anybody that ties on a rotary vise, if you're going over to your thread post or bobbin holder rest, You should be putting a half hitch in every time. It keeps from adding wraps as you spin the vise. And also, if you're to break your thread, it won't go beyond that. So it's, think of it kind of as an auto save feature. Next, I'm going to take my bobbin and I'm going to bring it over to my thread post. So I've got it over on the thread post. I'm going to take that peacock curl and that straggle string all together. I'm going to lay it on top of that thread. My tension nut is wide open, and I'm just going to spin that up. So we're just spinning it into a chenille rope. So take our bobbin off the thread post. We've now made a chenille rope out of that. Even if one of those breaks, it looks like one of them did, it's not going anywhere. A fish's tooth catches that, it's not going anywhere. Then we'll just take that, run it right up the body. So now by doing that, I've got the peacock curl, which the fish love. Then I've also got that straggle string in there. I'll tie it off to give it that bit of UV to it. And see, like one of them broke. I'll just pluck that out. Not a big deal. And then for the hackle, again, we're just using peacock breast feather. I love peacock, if you haven't noticed. So for that, I'm just going to grab the tips of it and kind of preen those back. I'm going to cut just a little triangle point for it. Wax my thread a bit and just helps it grab on a bit. Again, if anybody has questions about anything, flies or fishing, just holler out. Not one for talking. I'm going to spin my thread counterclockwise just so it goes backwards and grabs onto that feather a little bit.
I do love how fast that vise lets you make things.
Yeah, you know, speed is kind of just a byproduct of it. I mean, a lot of people think of it just as like, oh, you know, I don't tie commercially, I don't need that. And I get that, they're just thinking of the speed factor. I so slowly. It's not even funny. If I wanted to, I could probably tie faster, especially with an advice, but I just tie slowly. I'm not in a rush. Why would I bother? You know, I don't care if I'm tying fast or not, but it does just a byproduct of it, speed things up. So especially
an Atlas, which is a rotary, but it doesn't tie anything as fast as what you were doing, and it just, yours really seems to make it easier to do a lot of things.
It does, if you use it like it's intended. A lot of people don't, but you know, that's a nice thing too, though, is you can use it as much or as little as you want.
Now, is there anything that's making it curl back so nicely there in the way that you're doing this?
So with that, I just pulled it backwards.
Okay.
So I just,
that's pretty.
I like these to be probably over hackled compared to most wet flies. Just my preference. And then that stem, I also, these stems are so brittle on these. I like to just kind of pull that stem back and wrap over it as well. Realizing I'm going to have a bit of a head from it, but just so I know that's locked in well. Because this is a weighted one, I'm using red thread. If it was an unweighted one, I would be using black thread. That's just so I know really quickly, looking in my box, what it is. I don't have to be like, oh, you know, lift to try to figure out if I put weight on it or not. Normally I put drop ahead cement on everything. We skip that tonight just for time's sake. I will say I've been using this new Solar Lac out of Canada, so similar from my understanding to Solear. And I've been really enjoying it. we'll just forego that tonight for time's sake. So the next, any questions on that one?
With the solar lac, you do that with the UV light?
Nope, it's just like head cement. It's just a head cement.
Okay.
Like if I'm tying at shows, I'll use the UV just for it's quick, but I don't like doing it on videos because it tends to blind everybody. But no, the solar lac, it's just a head cement. Yeah, it's just a head cement, but you get a ton of it compared to other stuff.
And if you didn't have a rotary vise, if you're trying to secure that peacock, would you kind of wind it around?
Yeah, so if you didn't have a rotary vise,
That's okay. I don't want to disrupt the flow here because I've done it, but that's how I typically do it.
Yeah, you could do the same thing. You would just, tie in your peacock curl, and then your thread would be hanging down, and you just take that peacock curl and just kind of wrap it around the thread.
Mm-hmm.
That would do pretty much the same thing. I don't think you're going to get as tight of a chenille rope,
Sure.
but it would still help reinforce it. And then a lot of times people just use a counter rib, and that helps reinforce it a little bit too.
Yeah, I was just recently tying a bunch of Mickey fins for a competition, and having something where you can turn it makes it so much easier to get an even pacing, space spacing between the lines.
Correct. Yeah, I really like the ability to, so you can free spin it like that with the tension nut wide open. It also indexes every, look at the hook in it, that'd be a little bit easier to see. Sorry, this is just another huge salmon hook. But you can index it every 90 degrees, which is nice. Just like say you're putting eyeballs on a streamer, you can index it, to the side so you're getting it right where they need to go. And then if you tighten that tension nut up on the top of the vise, it spins, it doesn't free spin. So most of the time, that's how I have mine. And that allows me to just have more control to be able to look at the back side of the hood. Although I usually don't, and then one side looks terrible. But so it just lets you do that a little bit easier. Next, so is going to be, we fish a lot of stimulators out here. This is kind of stimulator-esque. It's called the Butt Head. It was designed by Cheech of Fly Fish Food out of Utah and named for the hot spot at the head and the butt. It could pass as a large caddis, a smaller stonefly, pretty much just an attractor pattern that floats really well for fishing that fast water, pocket water, that sort of thing.
What size hook, Britt?
Let me get there. I'm gonna grab my bag of materials for this one. I tried to prepare and put all the different materials in these little bags. See if that helped. So on this one, I'm going to be using a size 10, which is pretty large. Like I said, these pretty much everything I'm tying tonight, you can tie smaller if you want to. I try not to tie too small when I'm doing videos. It's just harder for people to see. But I regularly fish this in a size 10, so I'm just using an Arex. It's a sedge, dry barbless in size 10. So it's got a little bit of a curve to it. Let's switch threads out real quick. So for this, we'll just be using fluorescent green. And that's just classic waxed beetle thread. But we'll start by just attaching our thread. I usually start at least, my length behind, just as a way to make sure I don't go in front of that.
A question on your bobbin, Britt. Does that work pretty good for all different types of weight lines, or do you have to use different ones depending on the weight?
So it works for all of them. The main thing, let me find one that I can show you. So maybe this will show up. So if you can see it on that one, maybe the white one. So I don't know if you can see it in that video, but there's actually a few loops of thread around the leg of the bobbin. And so that provides, so there's the bobbin, there's the leg, the tip. And so to add the adequate amount of tension, you put a wrap around the leg. Smaller threads, you might have to do normally I do 2, but I tie mostly a dot or things like that. Bigger threads, you might only need 1, or some really big threads, you won't need any at all. And so that just helps provide the appropriate amount of tension for that clutch to work. But yeah, I mean, it's just, there's only one type of it. They do come in
Thank you.
cool colors, but they're all the same. And they work with GSP, like nano silk, all that. It's a ceramic tube, so you don't have to worry about the thread gouging into it at all. So we're gonna do the tail next. So I'm gonna dress my hook shank. So normally you're doing this over. Lord help you if you're doing a 10x long hook or something. The Norvice, we can just spin the hook and do that. For the tail, we're just using moose body hair. I just cut a bit off. I'm going to clean that out and then stack it. You're going to err on the side of too little or too much. I'd rather have a little bit too much. This is going to help support the back end of the fly. So, just going to tie that right in. Not a terribly long tail. Get right on the top of the shank of the hook. And then I'm going to pull all of that back up. Maybe if I can. Advance my thread to about the 2/3 point. Get that frizzy stuff out of it, or hit the hook point. And then pull that back down. And we're going to just incorporate that into our body. It just means it's going to be that much less dubbing that we have to put in there later. Also help some, not so much with moose, but if you were doing a pattern like with deer hair where it's hollow, that would help with flotation as well. So we'll just cover those butts up. The very back of this, remember we've got a hot spot. So I'm going to make a very pronounced green area here. After that, we're going to throw half hitch in. So next we're going to dub the body, which for dubbing, I've got just a stub in pheasant tail. For whatever reason, our cutthroat absolutely love this color. On a standard vise, you would just you could just dub it. You'd be twisting it onto your thread like that. The Norvice gives us some other options for doing dubbing. So I've just make sure I go on that. So I've got just a ball of dubbing here. I did turn the camera a little so you can see. So I've just kind of feathered it out so it's loose. You don't want it in a big ball. And put it up. My tension knot is wide open, and with any luck, this will pull right. I'm just going to dub it right onto the thread using the spinning feature of the vise. So like right now, it's pretty bushy there in the middle. So I'm just gonna pull that down. And if I pinch the thread, it'll actually tighten that up. Which I don't mind it being a little bushy, so we'll just go with that. As you go, you'll get to know about how much you need. Like this, I've got way more than I need on it. Way more than I need on it. It's been a while since, like I said, I've tied trout flies because I've been tying classic salmon flies. So Brian is probably laughing right now. When I told him I was tying trout flies, he's like, "What do you mean? You don't even tie those anymore." So there we go. So we've got the body. Again, I mean, if you wanted to cut some of that out, you could. But our fish really like bushy things, so we'll just leave it at that. For the underwing, we'll just be using some CDC. This is light done. Some looks like it was from Eric's in West Yellowstone. It just happened to be what I had laying around. Unfortunately, his shop isn't open anymore. They still guide, but they don't have the fly trap. I've got 2 feathers. Kind of hard to see them since they're light done. I'm just going to line those tips up the best I can. We're just going to tie those in. I like to have them going about halfway back on the tail. So we tie those down. And then rather than just trimming these ends off, we're going to just pull them back so that way we have a little bit more CDC. CDC is expensive, and the longer you throw away, the better. So with that, we'll just trim them that way, and that gives us just a little bit more CDC. If the stems are thin enough, it'll be under the deer hair wings, so it doesn't really cause the fly to go off kilter or anything when you're casting it. Next up, we'll be using just some Nature Spirit Stimulator deer hair. This is natural color, which I generally prefer a lighter color. I usually fish these in the really rough stuff, so I want to be able to see my fly. Sometimes I'll even use bleached hair, just because it's so much easier to see. So I've trimmed a clump of it. We're going to just clean that out and stack it. A lot of people around here don't even bother stacking it. It's just tidier looking, but the fish aren't generally going to care. And actually, if it's not all even, it's probably more natural, just because there's not necessarily a definite edge with what they see. So I put that in my stacker. I'm going to just take a quick measurement on that.
That's about 20 times.
I like to trim the ends off at a bit of an angle. It'll just help go into our front portion of the fly. So I'm going to tie those in. So like I said, this is a really similar kind of shape profile to a stimulator. Just a little bit different materials. So you want that to spread out quite a bit, nothing too crazy. Ooh, as I say that, it goes crazy. When we add our dubbing and our hackle, we can help kind of hold those in a little bit more too. So I'm not too worried about that right now. For hackle, I'm just using a whiting grizzly. This is 100 pack, so super simple to know what size you're using. Sometimes it's worth checking, but usually they're fairly spot on. So I'm just going to prepare that by tearing off just a little bit at the bottom. Tie that on the near side of the hook. And then we'll just add a little bit more dubbing just to go underneath all of that. For this, since we're just doing so little, I'm just gonna put it on normally. Like I said, that some people use the vise for a load of things, some people use it for only certain things. So it's always just up to the tires' preference and what they're doing. So I'm just gonna go ahead and see. I'm gonna go back just a little bit on that deer hair, just to hold it back a little. And then it also helps kind of bridge that gap on the bottom side. Leave plenty of room in the front. That front is going to be our hot spot. So we're going to have a pretty pronounced head on there. I'm going to go in and throw a half hitch in. Take our thread over to our thread post. I like to, for the first strap, do it by hand. Just to make sure my hackle isn't going to misbehave and twist on me. So I do one full wrap. Hopefully it doesn't pull the deer hair. There. Oh my. There. So then we'll just palm that all the way up to the front. So by using the vise to turn the hook, as opposed to going over top of it with that material, it allows you to keep a more consistent tension on it, which is going to lead to more durable flies. I've also got this handy little Norvice hackle, patented Norvice hackle guard. So it's literally just the cut off part of the bobbin. So it just pulls everything out of the way. And again, I'm putting a very pronounced head on this because we're using it as a hot spot. Finishing it there. And trim them down. And then we can go ahead and trim it. I kind of dog-legged it back so that it for sure wouldn't pull. And you can see, I guess, kind of a little bit since I've tied some of these. Some of my deer hair did migrate over when I made my thread wraps. So as Al Beatty says, the good Lord gave you scissors. So if you have any little pieces out of the way, you can snip them out if you'd like. Not a big deal. I guarantee you the fish probably won't care, but just so it looks a little bit tidier. So that is a Butt Head Attractor pattern. Again, it's a fly fish food pattern out of Utah. And the cutthroat here just go crazy for it. I've also tied it in red and purple, like red and purple thread. And they like it quite a bit. Is there any questions on that? All right, so we'll go on to the next one. The next one is a very simple pattern. Very simple, but it's super effective. So for this, I'll be using, it's dry long barbless on Arex FW571. this will be the fly that we're tying. It's called a tom thumb. Again, uber basic. There's two materials. There's thread and there's hair. That's it. But it is caught fish for us all over, all the way down to those spring creeks with PhD fish. I thought it was a Canadian pattern, which upon research, it actually traces its origins to England back in the 1940s, but it was popularized in Western Canada, which is where I thought it was from.
What size hook was it again, please, Britt?
I'm using a size 14.
14.
But again, this is one that, I mean, I know people that fish them all the way up to size 10. So just, you know, depending on the size of sedges you have. I know some of them up in Canada are huge. So you just cater it to what size sedges that you have. You can also cater the colors and things like that. It was originally intended as a caddis imitation. It mimics the emergence profile of the hatching sedges where they prop their wings up to dry. People have also been known to fish it on a full sink line, and it's one of those patterns, the more ragged it gets, the better it fishes, which is good because being all hair, it gets pretty ragged quite quick. I will just be using black classic wax thread. Again, I'm just going to strip my thread. Oh, I can find where I put my scissors. And dress that hook shank just like we would anything. For pretty much everything else on the fly, I'm just using some cow elk in natural color from Nature Spirit. You could use any color that you wanted, but I like to use the lighter colors. It's just easier for me to see them more. So the first part is we'll tie in the tail. So I'm going to take a clump. Again, this is going to help support your fly. So I would always, I'd rather have a little bit more than not enough, especially knowing that we'll be fishing this through pretty rough water. So I'm going to just clean that out, clean all the fuzzies out of it. And as far as size goes, you're really only limited by the length of hair that you have. So I know some people tie them up to size 10, which I don't know that we have any hair long enough to do that, to be honest. Pretty long hair. So you want your tail to be about the length of the shank of the hook. Just gonna go on. Tie that in right up the back. You want it to flare some, it doesn't have to be a lot, but try to keep it on top of that hook shank. And then we're going to do just like we did with that moose body hair. We're going to pull it up, advance our thread. And get it. We'll just incorporate that into the body of the fly. And trim those buttons off. You're going to wrap the buttons down, but don't wrap them down really hard because that's going to provide flotation for it. If you mash it down, then it's squishing out all those air pockets. So you can put some wraps over it, but don't go crazy with them. Yep. And then next, we're going to do the part that is the shellback and the wing. So I've found that if you take, because we're going to tie the wing in behind and then pull it over top. So if you take, it's just a straw that I've cut up. If you take that and just put it over that tail area, once you tie the other in and you go to pull it forward, you won't be pulling forward all of your tail fibers. So again, we're just using that same material, just the cow elk. And just clean out all that fuzz from it, any broken pieces, short pieces, that sort of thing. Hair stacker. I do have to say I'm amazed that the cat hasn't come out here yet and photobombed everybody. She's watching that up, and I figured she would most assuredly be up in my business today. Brian must have had a talk with her before he left work. I got those all stacked and cleaned. Now, the key to this is gauging the length, because we're going to pull them forward and then up. So generally the length, you're going to want it to be at least a half a shank longer than your tail, because we'll tie it in all the way to the back, pump it over, and then tie it to where those tips are up in the air. Take a measurement, try to guess as best you can. Sometimes you get it right on, sometimes you don't. It's just how it is. Go ahead and tie those butt ends. Make sure you leave room in the front here, because that's where we're going to tie them in at once we pull it over top. So again, oh, and look, my little straw moved. So I get just put the straw back if you move it on accident. So again, do wraps, but not tight wraps over this body section until you get to the rear here. Then you can tighten them up. A lot of people will use peacock herl or dubbing there over that center section. You certainly can. It's not necessary. The fish eat it just fine without it, but you can. I'm not going to today. So now we're going to just pull that up. See how that straw kept those down, so we didn't grab them up in all of our hair. This would help if I bring the thread back to the front. Advance your thread to the front of the hook shank. Bring that over, and then we're just going to take some wraps down. I like to hump it a little bit. The gentleman that showed us this pattern, Bill Drollymore, love fishing these. He had thousands of them, I think, for the lakes up in BC. So we like to hump it a little bit, so it does kind of look like a humpy even to some degree. Once you've got those tied down, pull them back, bring your thread in front of that clump of hair, and we're just going to build a thread down here in front of it just to help hold those wings up. If you've got any stray hairs, like always, you can use your scissors to remove them. It happens. Happens more than we'd all like to admit, but it does. So I'm just gonna try to pull those back, and then we'll just put a few turn whip finish on it and call it good. So super simple fly, boring, ugly, but it catches so many fish. Brian caught his biggest fish ever on one of our spring creeks on this fly, and I think it's just because they haven't seen it before. So again, that's the Tom Thumb, just an imitation caddis pattern. Have we got any questions on that one? Perfect. Okay, we will move on. Next up, we'll be tying, this is by far my favorite trout fly for our rivers. It's called a Beetle Bug Palmer. Just a second while I get my materials out.
What did you say it's called again, please, Brett?
A Beetle Bug Palmer. So it's a Dave Hughes pattern, which I know we all know him for his wet fly book and wet flies and things, but he ties a lot of other things too. And so this is one of his patterns. Forget which of his books it's in. I'd have to go look. There's a fly called just the beetle. What is it? The beetle bug, and then this is a variation of that with the Beetle Bug Palmer aspect of it. And you'll see why it's going to be very heavily hackled. And when we're fishing and there's just nothing really going on, this is usually my go-to fly. Just kind of an attractor seeking fly. See if I can find something there. It's got the upright wings like a wolf. But I do think they'll think like it has an October caddis since we have so many of those about. I think they just at some point in the fall just key in on that orange color. So for the hook, be using the Eric's FW 503 size 12. It's just a dry fly light barbless. Yeah, any dry fly hook will work. I do sometimes just like to tie them on like a little bit longer shank. Just gives me more room for more hackle.
Are they quite strong dry fly hooks, though, Brett?
You know, I'm surprised. Generally, I don't like light dry fly hooks. They always feel very chintzy to me. Like I just not had a lot of confidence in them. But I've been pleasantly surprised with these ones. I mean, they're lighter, but yet they still feel, and as far as catching fish on them, I've not had a problem with it. So I've been pleased with them. I've always just shied away from light dry fly hooks on other things just because of, yeah, but I'm tying on them and they're bending in my vise. So I've lost a few fish on other ones, and I just didn't care for them. But these ones have been surprisingly well for us. But you could tie it on any dry fly hook. It doesn't have to be a light one. So I mean, they give a little bit in the vise, but not like some of them I've seen in other varieties. So again, we're just using black classic wax thread. Gonna start it behind about an eye length behind. Oops, sorry, I just noticed a chat. Steve Cooper says peacock is now sites restricted. That is correct. It's been that way for a couple of years now. Peacock is sites restricted, which to me is just crazy because we have peacocks all over Idaho and people raise them. So it's odd to me that it is a sites listed bird now, but it is. So times in other countries, I think it might be starting to be more difficult to get them. For the tail, I'm going to just use, again, moose body hair, just natural colored. We see a theme with the tails here. Like I said, these flies, I fish through a lot of very fast pocket water and rapids. So they're going to have very stiff tails and generally lots of hackle to keep them afloat. I'll clip that off. I'm gonna just put it in my hair stacker. You want to be about the length of the hook shank, nothing crazy. Tie that in. I'm gonna do a few softer wraps just to kind of gather that as opposed to flaring it out. Pull those up and just cut those butt ends off. Wrap them over. So for the wings on this, a lot of people use white kip tail or calf tail tied upright and divided, so like a wolf pattern. I've been turned on to this, which is actually kid goat. People also use white calf body hair for the divided upright wings, which is pretty short. Usually this calf, or excuse me, this kid goat hair is a little bit longer. It has a little bit more length to it. And so I find it a little bit easier to work with. And it's also been being used quite a bit on like blue charms, salmon fly wings, that sort of thing. But it just gives you a little bit more length, and the consistency is real similar to that of calf tail, or not calf tail, goodness, not calf tail. It's not kinky like that. Calf body hair. So I just cut off a chunk. Get out any of that under fur. You can also use for the wings, you can use poly yarn, anything like that. I don't think it would matter as far as fishing it goes. I just don't like the looks of it, but it does make it quite a bit easier to tie. So I've now stacked that. Switch hands with it, hopefully without messing it up. Pull any outliers out. I'm going to advance my thread to about the 1/3 point, a little bit forward of that. You want your wings to be about the shank of the hook. I like to spin my thread counterclockwise, or the anti-clockwise, I think is what you'll say. Counterclockwise if you're stateside. Just so it jumps to the rear. And I can kind of just gauge that and make sure it's the length I want it to be. Do a few securing wraps. And then just trim those butt ends. Try to get them to kind of meld into those moose butt ends. So you have a nice transition and you don't have a gap there between the two of them. Advance your thread back up, and we're going to go right in front of these wings, make a bit of a thread down. And then as far as splitting the wings go, this is one thing where I really enjoy the Norvice. I tighten my tension nut up so it's not a free spin. I can actually turn the fly towards me and kind of eyeball that split of the wings. I'll turn it towards you so you can kind of see that viewpoint. With that tension nut down, it doesn't free spin, so I've got a lot of control over it. And so with them you can then kind of do the eyeball thing and figure out where you want that split to be for the two separated wings. I'm going to cool that good enough. Worst case is if you find out later on you've got too much in one and not the other, you can use your scissors to rectify that. So I'm just doing some figure 8 wraps to separate those. So I'm separated now. Now I'm just going to post them. Do that. I'm just going to take one. Again, this is where it's nice to be able to tip that fly towards you a little bit. It just gives you a little bit more control as you're posting your wings, or tip it away from you. depending on what side you're working on. I'm going to struggle. I got them posted. They look pretty even. If they're not even, use your scissors. You can cut out a few here or there. We've got a stray one that didn't get put up, so just cut that out. At this point, I'm going to use some head cement here. I like to apply just a dab of head cement in the middle of the wings, just to kind of keep them where they're at. You can also use UV resin for that if you want. Certainly interchangeable. Be careful of that solar app. Ooh, the fumes are pretty potent. Make sure you're in a well ventilated area for that. So we're going to just take our thread back to the rear of the floy. For the back hackle, we're going to use a size 14, just a brown hackle. The back hackle should be one size smaller than the fly you're tying, and the front hackle will be the appropriate size. So I've got just a brown hackle here. If you have hackles that are more of the Christmas tree shape, you could just use one and tie it in from the tip so that it gets bigger as it goes forward. But so many of the genetic hackles nowadays are just, pretty well one size fits all, one size the whole length or close. So we'll use two separate hackles for it. So I'm going to strip that hackle. I'm going to strip a little bit further off of that side, so that way the first few wraps we have are nice and clean. Put that back with our hair clip. Now for dubbing, just using it's sparkle dub, and I'm just using the red color. So I'm just going to pull a bit of that out. By the time you add the dubbing, the red dubbing and the brown hackle, it often looks pretty orange. So with this, you could do it the Norvice way where you spin it onto it. It does get a little complex with the wings right there. So I'm just going to dub it on typically as you would anything else. I put my tension nut all the way down, and this hackle is really long, so I'm going to use another hair clip to hold it out of the way. I'll just move it in and out to get behind that hook point. And then just take it. If you want, you can tighten it as you go. And take it just right up behind the wings. Don't want it to be too crazy of a body. You can build a little taper in if you'd like. There's going to be so much hackle on it though, honestly. I don't know that the taper matters much. I'm going to throw a half hitch in there, just again right behind those wings. Take my thread over to my thread post. So with my hackle here, and then I'm going to take that first wrap by hand, just to make sure it doesn't twist or misbehave in any way. And then I'm just going to palmer this hackle. This is where the Beetle Bug Palmer part comes in. The Beetle Bug doesn't have this hackle. I'm just going to palmer that up.
Now, when you're palming your hackles, do you ever have to twist it, or is that really not necessary?
I looked out. This one didn't twist around on me. So sometimes they do, even though you tie it in like you want it to wrap. Sometimes they, they just don't always behave.
I think some of your whites got pulled back on that last wrap.
So if that's the case, then you can just kind of manhandle it around. But like on this one, I did look out, but it didn't twist the wrong
Pretty
way.
flat.
I've seen too where if it's not wrapping the way you intended it to, you can take your scissors and kind of pull it. You're almost putting a crease in it that way to where it'll correct that if it's a twister. But I'm surprised this one wasn't a twister. Usually, if you're tying on a video or something, it's usually twists all over on you. For the front hackle, we're just going to use the same exact thing, only in a size 12. So size proper to the hook. So I like my hackles on these, the back one, kind of the cup going forward, and then the front going backwards. So they're kind of run into each other. It matters not really. It's just how I've always tied them. And a lot of these your genetic hackles, they're so straight anyways. I mean, they barely have any curve to them as it is. So it would be probably more pronounced if you're using something other than a whiting genetic type hackle. I'm just going to tie this one in on the near side of the hook. Try not to trap any fibers in. I tied it in front and then behind the wings. So there's, pretty much no way that bugger is going to be pulling out. We'll go ahead and just put a half hitch in. Bring our thread over to our thread post. And then again, take this and do that first wrap by hand. This one cooperated also, that's rare. So it's got the cup towards the back. I'm just going to take a few wraps behind the wings. And then usually the ones in front of the wings, because I'm trying to pull them out of the way, I will just do it by hand. You can use the vise to do it, but I do find that I like to pull the wings back a little bit so I don't trap anything down. And I'm going to go ahead and just tie off. I like to dog leg that front hackle, so I'm going to pull it back and just tie back over it. That'll keep it from pulling out. Okay, just pull everything back. Nice little head. You can, if you have the Norvice bobbin with this little cap on it, you can just use that to hold everything back out of your roll. So finish on it and call it a day for that one. So for whatever reason, this fly seems to work well when nothing else does on our rivers. So it's really my searching pattern that I use most often.
Oh, I missed it when you put that thing on there. What was that you put to hold things in place?
So it's just this. It's just the bobbins have a little rubber cap over top of them.
Okay.
So I just cut the end of it off, and it just slides over top of it. And I just use that as kind of a hackle guard, I guess you call it. Just helps keep everything out of the way when you're trying to put your whip finish on. So I just keep it on the bobbin there, and then bob it off over top of everything when I'm ready for it.
Thank you.
You can use a little rubber band or a piece of straw, a drinking straw, just chop bits up.
Okay.
Even probably a little O-ring or something, like if you found the right size, that would probably work just as well for that.
Float rubbers work well.
Ooh, yeah. Next one we'll go to is more of an adventure pattern. So it is the Quigley's film Critic. So it's an emerging mayfly pattern. We'll be using a turkey biot for the body on it. Switch my threads out real quick.
Yeah, but I've only been tying for about a year now, so I really appreciate all this advice. It helps a lot.
Like if you've ever got any questions, I can try to answer the best I can or find someone that can. Lord knows I certainly don't know everything. And nor will I ever know everything. There we go.
And what I'm trying to find next is I want to do a Christmas tie. I was thinking, or a Christmas fly. I was thinking about maybe doing a variation of the clouser and call it the Santa Clouser.
I think you asked about a Christmas fly on one of my pages, one of my comments. I haven't got back to it. It's been a crazy week at work, so I've been fun this week to that. I have tied a kind of a Christmas fly. It was a variation of a rat, a variation of a rusty rat Christmas fly. So I'll post that up on that comment for you to see. It was this. We had a jury trial this week at work, and it was absolute madness. So.
If you ever want to tie a Christmas tree, go onto YouTube and type in Barry Old Clark Christmas tree, and there's a lovely pattern to make a proper Christmas tree with baubles.
Yeah, I think I've got that one, and they put the little. They actually use tinsel, and they put the bead eyes as the for the ornaments. Yeah.
So for this one, I'm going to switch out to my shank bows. Not tying on a shank, but it'll just give you an idea of what they look like.
I also love the red, white, and blue one you did too. That was awesome.
Thank you. For this, I'm using the shank jaws. They're in the offset hub though, so they won't spin on center, but the hook shank will because it's up a little bit higher. So it's going to spin close to center, not perfect, but close. And these, just like the fine point jaws, just allow you to get kind of into the bend of a little bit more. So if you're tying nymphs or mergers, that sort of thing, it just gives you a little bit more access than the standard in. We'll be using, say what hook. So it's just it's just an Arex super dry in size 12. You could tie these much smaller if you wanted. I know Eric was talking about a green drake emerger, so this is kind of my go at that. You could probably need to be a little bit larger even though for green drake, but we'll go with these. That's the only bigger size.
Thanks for tying it, Britt. Appreciate it.
So we're gonna start our thread just about midway back on that shank, not all the way to the front.
What's the name again, please, Britt?
It's called a Quigley's Film Critic.
Okay.
So it's going to be similar to his hackle stacker, only a little bit different. It's a really fun pattern to tie and fish. So I can make sure I have my material that way.
And when you have a hook that's shaped like that, is that a different name kind of hook?
So I mean, to me, this looks more like an emerger hook where it kind of bends down. They call it a super dry, but like if you were to look up like a clink hammer, it's tied more on a hook like this where it kind of bends down. So the back of the fly is going to be more down in the water as opposed to everything on top of it. So more like an emerging pattern, more like an emerging fly that's coming through the film.
Okay, cool.
We do get to use some of Steven's awesome magpie materials, turkey buyouts today, so I'm excited about it.
And the emergers, are they considered wet flies then or dry flies?
Kind of in between.
In between? Okay.
That's not a technical answer, I guess. I mean, I would consider them more of a wet fly because they're in the film, where in my mind, a dry fly is more on top. But I don't know really the technical answer for that, or if there is one. But a lot of times, though, you'll find fish hitting the emerging ones as opposed to the adults on the surface. Also, it looks like if one gets stuck in its shuck as it's emerging, you know, that's easy target for the fish. So if they see one that has that kind of shuck behind it back in the bend here, they kind of can key in on that as a bug that's in distress and not gonna get out.
Hey, Britt, I just wanted to say if he wants to learn about emergers, there's a very, very good podcast on the Orvis Fly Fishing podcast with Tom Rosenbauer. Just go to podcast on your iPhone and go to the Orvis Fly.
I'll check it out. I hadn't thought to check their podcast. I follow them on YouTube.
Yeah,
Plus,
check their
we
podcast.
have an Orvis store here in Charleston as well.
Yeah, check out their podcast. I just listened to it a couple of days ago myself out of interest,
Okay.
and it's very good. It's
right,
very
thank you.
well done. Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks, Eric. Sounds like I'll have to
Not
listen.
often I can add something, Britt, so happy to.
I didn't have a super technical answer for that. I just fish them. I don't know all the super fancy stuff. No way am I like an amazing fisher person. So for the shuck, I'm gonna use dirty bug yarn. You can use Zelon, Antron, dubbing, yeah, pretty much whatever. Nice thing about this is it is 2-strand, so I've untwisted it and just taken one strand of it so that it's super thin. Actually, I'm gonna back my thread off a few wraps. So I'm just gonna take this material and go under and up, saving us a thread wrap. As I tie this down, I'm gonna keep it kind of elevated at a 45-degree angle, and that just makes sure we're keeping it on the top of the hook shank. We're gonna tie clear pretty well down into the bend of that hook shank. I want it to be pretty short, so just nice and tidy, and then can kind of brush it out. I just brush it out with my fingernail. That's just representing the shuck. For the tail, we're going to be using Coq de Leon. This is, I believe, medium speckled. I think Brian cringed when I grabbed this bag of his. So you've got just medium speckled. Any speckled fiber will work. Coq de Leon just has, you know, generally some really nice fibers in it with that coloration. So just grab a small clump. Yeah, 3 or 4. Have to be a ton. And if you want, you can, if you're tying on a hook like this, to make it easier to tie the tail in, you can invert the hook a little bit like that. Just gives you, again, even more access to the back end. Adjust that length to your preference. Got the, yeah, good. The body, we are using Stephen Hankins Magpie Materials Wild Turkey Buyouts. These are amazing. I used to hate tying with turkey buyouts until I got these. They're so supple, you don't even have to soak them in water ahead of time. And they're quite large. When I was talking to Stephen, turns out, like most anything on this, there's a sweet spot in there where you're going to find longer ones as opposed to shorter ones, like on the ends. So that was a helpful piece of information. Just to know what I was looking for. And then, yeah, just not having to soak them in water makes me so much more likely to use them just because I'm not a patient person. So I'm just gonna take one of them. Look at the length on that, it's crazy. So I'm gonna take one of them, pull it off. We wanna leave that nub on the back there. If you cut it off, you won't get the benefit of that nub, and that'll help us know how to tie it in what direction. Yeah, cut those butt ends off. Well, you can take some spiral wraps, kind of cover that up. Now, when you tie this in, we want, I'm going to reorient my hook so it's a little bit easier to see. When you tie this in, you want the notch, that's the notch, facing backwards. Just going to tie that tip in. So by having that notch facing backwards, that'll allow us to have that nice raised ridge on it. If you do it the other way, then it'll be smoother. Now I can't find my piece of dirty bug yarn that I want here. So there it is.
So a quick question for you on that turkey. I've never actually tied with turkey. So normally you have to soak it to get it subtle or to get it soft if you don't have that brand that you're using.
Correct. A lot of them you have to just, you can get like a paper towel and just get it damp and set them in it for a little while before, and it just makes them pretty brittle. So it just makes them a little bit softer. So when you're tying with them, they don't just split.
Got it. Thank you.
Most, I think every other brand I've used of turkey biots, I've had to do that with. And I just, I guess I don't know that patience, so I never bother. But with these ones, you don't have to do that, which is nice. And they've got some nice length, and the dye colors are really good. So definitely a good brand to get if you're in the market for them. But you know, any of them will work. You just have to put a little bit more elbow grease into the front end of it to soak them. So I worked just that strand of straggle string, or not straggle string, goodness, dirty bug yarn. So I'm going to tie that in. Maybe. I'm going to leave it kind of the length of the body and just tie it all the way in. Because I want to keep somewhat of a consistent underbody for that goose bite. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm not even doing the right thing. Scratch that. Okay, we're taking that off. The biot is the body, not the dirty bug yarn. Crikey. Okay, so we're just gonna transfer a thread up to the front. So this fly has a lot of stuff going on at the top. So we're going to tie that biot off about right here, because this is where this gap here is where our hackle is gonna go. And then we still have to tie the front wing type post off at the very front. Grab that. I am going to put a half hitch in here, and we'll just use the rotary vise. You can put head cement down if you want on this. You don't have to. If you want, just for the security, we're just going to take this and just wrap that up. So that's our body. Then when I take my thread off the thread post, it's already in the position just to tie that right off. So this employs the hackle stacker technique. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a very different way of putting hackle on a fly. It works quite well for this emerging type pattern. Just going to be using just some poly yarn. In cream, you can use white, you can use orange if you wanted it easier to see. That's a full strand. We're going to be doubling it over, which is going to be way too thick. So I'm going to just have that. So I've literally just pulled it in half. Now I've got just a little bit thinner of a strand. So we're going to have it, I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to have it with the loop and then the two ends in the back. We're going to tie these ends right in front of that floor or that abdomen. And then just go ahead and trim that off. So I've just got a little tuft of it there. That's your thread. So we've still got this loop kind of hanging out front here. We're going to advance our thread. And now again, we're still going to have to tie something off in the front of this. So be mindful of that. Don't wrap it all the way to the eye of the hook. Like that. And then we're going to pull it back. So that now your loop of poly yarn is more to the rear of the fly. For the hackle, I'm just going to be using some dun hackle. You can use grizzly. The nice thing with this is you can pretty much tie it to match any type of mayfly you want, both in size and color. So the world is really your limit on it. So I've just prepared the hackle by kind of pulling all the fibers back. I'm going to strip that first bit off. And then I'm tying it in right on the near side of the hook again. Oh. I've got our loop of poly material, our hackle. Now we're going to put some dubbing on that. So I'm just using some olive, these are super fine dubbing from Semperfli. We just need ever so little, you don't need very much. We're just going to be covering that section right. That go all the way up to that front edge, but not off of it. Take one wrap behind that post and end with your thread in front of it. So your thread will go around and over. So by having this loop here, we can just hold it with our middle finger and start wrapping this hackle around that post. There's various ways to do this. You'll see all sorts of different videos on how to do it, but this is what I found to be easiest. Not necessarily right or wrong, just easiest. Now you want that length of hackle there to be the same as that body, because we're going to be pulling it forward like that. So maybe go just another, and it's going to be messy. It's not intended to be a beautiful Instagram hackle or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's going to look messy. This is what's going to support your fly. So we've got that. We're going to take our thread. And we're just going to tie that hackle off The nice thing is with this post, you can kind of move it to where you're tying that hackle up and not trapping any of those fibers. Once you've got tied off, trim that hackle off. So you've got a couple options here. So we've got a thread on the back of the fly. You can take, and we need to get it to the eye of the fly. You can take it and go underneath if you want, which the fish will see a thread wrap under there. The fish isn't going to care, but some tyers care. So the other option is to go with that thread wrap over top. So that puts you tying the opposite direction now. You'd be tying with the thread coming towards you. You can just put a half hitch in there. And now you're back to tying the correct direction. Yeah, up to you. A fish isn't going to care if there's a thread wrap on the bottom there. You could always put a little bit of dubbing on it if you wanted and cover it. But if your thread is matching, nobody's going to care. So we're going to take that loop now. We're going to pull it over. And we're just going to preen all of that hackle back. Keep it on kind of on your side of that eye of the hook. We're just going to take 2 wraps. If you spin your thread counterclockwise, it'll help it jump to the rear like that and help you take those wraps. I'm going to take my bobbin, pull it back, and then I've got that loop here on my finger. It's hard to see. I'm just going to pull it down and pull my bobbin kind of back, tightening that hackle up. So we're actually stacking the hackle on top of that thorax now. Do a couple securing wraps, and then jump your thread in front of that. And this is where we were having to make sure we left plenty of room. We're going to build a little thread dam in front of that there to pop that up in front. Everything back. Go ahead and throw a couple turn whip finish, head cement if you want. Thread out. And then you generally want this post to be just a little bit longer than your wing. So just use your scissors to trim it out. Really easy to see when you're fishing it. This post kind of acts as a sighter. And then you've got that nice body going into the water like an emerger with a shuck. So it's a really effective fly pattern, and it's so versatile, being able to tie it in other sizes and in colors. You can really fine tune it to your specific mayflies on your rivers.
What's the name again, please, Britt?
Well, the Quigley's Film Critic.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Sure. Here, I'll type it in the comments if that's easier.
Oh, great.
Guy's name. So, if I can find the comments. Oh, chat.
I had bird of prey written down next.
Yes, I have a bird of prey coming up.
That's a very nice pattern, Britt. Thank you for adding that. If you did with all my requests, thanks. It's I'll tie some of those for my trip out west next summer.
That fly would work great on Oregon's Metolius in May, if there's a green dray catch going on.
Yeah, it would be really good. I know, I mean, we fish for cutthroat, and generally they're not overly particular, but sometimes they get a little. So when they're getting a little tight-lipped, it does pretty well. But I just love how versatile it is. I mean, it's just that simple type of pattern, and then you can just do whatever you want with it. I've seen
Work well on English rivers.
Or it's just a dub body with a red rib, or I mean, you can do so much with it, just with that kind of base style, I guess.
What do you reckon, Derek? I reckon that'll work well on our rivers.
It will, Pete.
I know.
As long as fish speak English.
I'll let you know in 2 years.
Say again, Britt.
I'll let you know in 2 years if it works over there.
You coming over here?
That's the plan. Next up, so now we're kind of transitioning to the wet flies. And I'll just switch back to the normal jaws. I just can let y'all just see an example of some of the different jaws. Probably 90% of the time I use just the inline jaws. For the salmon flies, I'll switch out to the big ones.
Britt, I did have a question about the jaws on the vise. I saw that they had like a saltwater jaws, like a really, what sizes would that be for? Like giant saltwater stuff?
It can be. So the standard inline will go up to about, I want to say a one aught.
Okay.
Oh no, I can't remember. Sorry, I should have looked. I should know that. Anything bigger, it's really best to get the saltwater. They're some call them the saltwater jaws or just the large jaws.
Okay.
It'll be out of focus a little, but they're
Get away with the small ones up to pretty big hook, but because I got the big ones, I used to tie anything over a 1.0 on the big ones.
So anything over a 1.0, I definitely switch up to the bigger ones. They're just, I mean, identical. They're just a little beefier. They also have more length.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I tie some big streamers and stuff for smallmouth and stuff that would probably need the bigger jaws.
having that bigger length or that longer length too. So yeah, and like any of my classic salmon flies, I use these ones on. The other
Thank you.
option, a lot of people have been using the shank jaws for pretty much everything, not just shanks. And so these also have that length a little bit more, and these will hold up to pretty big hooks as well. If you're getting into like shark size hooks, the bigger ones are definitely going to be where you want to be in.
So can
Freshwater
the
only.
shanks work for both the smaller and the larger, or no?
What was that?
Can the shank one work for both the smaller and the larger rough flies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Sue says she needs to sign off. I hope I just didn't see that. All right, have a good Thanksgiving, Sue. We'll talk to you later.
Have you given up your meal for us tonight then, Britt?
No, Brian's, it's only 1 in the afternoon here, so it's pretty early. And Brian works till 2, so once he gets home, we're gonna have our meal, which consists of, I ordered Chinese yesterday, Chinese takeout. So we're warming up Chinese. We just don't do the whole big turkey and everything. We don't have family here or anything, so it's very easy.
I thought you were all turkey and mash out there.
No, we're not big fans of turkey, so we'll just eat other day at our house.
Now, the question with your streamers on the normal shank or even on the small jaws, for the average streamer size, you won't need to go to the real big jaws.
Oh, gosh, no.
The
No.
big jaws I'm using on size 6 and size 8.0 hooks for pike and bass.
Like if you're doing a little pike, really big bass flies, that sort of thing, then the bigger ones are nice. But
Yeah, I don't think I tie much over a 4-aught. I tie some big streamers on 4-aughts. Like jig hooks, or worm hooks, sorry, but that's the biggest I tie probably.
You'd be fine with a shank.
Or the shanks, yeah. Just either the large or the shanks would be fine either way.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Britt, I might send you something for your recommendation afterwards. just putting together some things for a Christmas list for my wife.
Okay, so next up we have is called the Beetle Bug Shaky Beeley. Oh notes. So this is a fly that comes out of West Yellowstone in the Yellowstone National Park. It's a wet fly. They use it to target fall run browns on the Madison inside Yellowstone Park. It was named, as the story goes, and there's varying stories, it was named after a ranger that loved to fish back in the 40s, and his last name was Beeley. Story goes his hands shook so bad when removing the fly because he was so excited about catching a fish that he was given the name Shaky. This is the fly he loved to fish, so they call it Shaky Beeley. We'll be tying it on just Arex 531 size 12 in it's just a sedge barbless. It is a dry fly hook. You could certainly tie it on a heavier hook if you wanted. Using classic waxed in wood duck color, which is one of the newer colors that Semperfli come out with this year, and it is one of our absolute favorite colors. Brian may have had some part of suggesting that they make it. So it's just a really good color thread, and it matches a lot of things. So it's one of our favorites. We'll just attach our thread like we would any fly. There's the hook shank. So for kind of the tail shuck, we're using orange crystal flash. So just get it. Oh, I just threw it across the room. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. I shook the straw to get it out and it went flying. So I've cut through about 4 strands of it all. And so we're actually going to tie it in and then also have it out in front of the hook shank because we'll be using this in the collar of the fly as well. So we'll just tie it in there on the top. Leave it out front and trim that a little bit just so it's not in the way as much. We're going to trim this back bit. Just there, you don't want it terribly long, it's just going to be part of the shuck. For the tail or shuck, we're just using some mallard dyed wood duck. If you have wood duck, you could use that, of course. But and for this, I'm just gonna strip some fibers off that. We'll pull the feather away from the fibers. That way they stay somewhat aligned. And you want this to be a little bit longer. And the rib on this, we're going to just be using some brown uni thread. It's 3/0 in dark brown. We're going to use embroidery thread, but apparently upon cleaning out our fly tying room weeks ago, I threw it out inadvertently or something. I have no idea where it is. This is where we get to the dirty bug yarn for the body. So we're using mottled golden olive. And again, I'm going to split these 2 strands if you just untwist them. And that just gives me the ability to have a little bit thinner body. If you're tying a bigger fly, then you use both of them. And I'm going to tie this in so that it's the whole length of the body. That way we don't have any weird gaps or bumps or anything like that. Or my example. Okay, so we will just advance that, and we're only going to go up to about the 1/3 back point, because we're going to put a thorax in Western turtle. Go ahead and half hitch in there. Take our thread over to our thread post. I like to tighten that tension nut up so I have more control over it. I'm just going to use that for the body material. Tie that off, trim out the waist. And then we'll take that rib, no different, another half hitch in. I like to twist it so it cords it up a little bit. I'm just going to take 4 or 5 wraps just to give it some segmentation. The thorax. I put just orange ostrich. It's nature's spear. And I like to try to find 2 that are pretty fluffy for this. And then I just rip the tips of those off. I'm just going to tie them in right in that thorax area. And then if you want, so here's kind of an example where again you can use the vise. I'll try to do this without getting the crystal flash buggered up in it. So I just put half hitch in. Gonna just use my finger as the thread post. Pull these over. I like to kind of pull those fibers back. And then we're just gonna spin those together. So just like the peacock pearl, we've done the same thing with the ostrich turtle. I'm just gonna make a fuzzy little thorax out of it. If you want, you can, as you wrap, try to, especially those last wrap or 2, try to keep those fibers pulled back so they're not getting into your collar area. And for this, we'll just tie it off just like you would a dubbing loop. These and just push them to the rear. We're just going to kind of use those as part of the collar. So just push those back. And then trim them about mid-body. Oops, I missed one. Just trim that. And then for the collar, we're just going to use just the Hungarian pork roach. Beautiful hun pink from Blue Ribbon Flies. I'm gonna go start by just peeling all that fluff out the way, and then we'll be tying it in by the tip. So I'm just gonna prepare that feather like we do most everything by making a little triangle tie-in point. Wax the thread real quick. Again, if you twist your thread counterclockwise, anti-clockwise, it'll jump back and help you grab that. Now you could use the rotary aspect to wrap this hackle. We're only doing a wrap and a half. I'm not going to bother. So I just grabbed it with my hackle pliers. Can pull those feathers back, those barbules, pull it off, because of course I'm going to do that when I'm tying live. This is where I'm still very struggling with trying to get the right amount of tension. I'm going to back those wraps off and tie it back in again, but still struggling after being out of a cast with having the right amount of tension on anything. Tie that in, hopefully it stays this time. And then we'll just pull those back and do, you know, a wrap and a half. Now the hackle stem broke. Pretty sure we're dealing with Murphy's Law tonight. So you don't want it over hackled, so a wrap and a half is sufficient. And that out. It's probably about half wrap too many, but that's okay. Ahead and just put a nice little head on it, clean everything up. And just do a 4 or 5 turn quick finish. So that's a shaky Beeley. Like I said, we use it for lake run brown trout in the Yellowstone National Park. They run up out of the lakes and into the park, and it's some amazing fall fishing where you can swing flies for them. Derek, what are we looking at for time? I've got more if we want it. If not, we're good.
I've got unlimited time, so it's up to yourself, sweetheart.
I've got a couple more if anybody wants to see them, or I can jump to a steelhead fly, or
Whatever suits you.
any input from the gallery. I've got 2 other nymphs I was gonna do. They're nothing too special. And then the other one was going to be for the royal treatment.
I'm happy to watch something like that being tied, I must admit.
The steelhead fly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on the others. I'll shut up again now.
Me too.
All for it, go for that one, yeah.
Go and stand in the corner, Pete.
So that makes sense. I'm just going to switch out to the larger jaws. They're just a little bit easier on the bigger hook shanks. Love trout flies, but they're pretty repetitive. So,
You can always tie more another time, Britt.
no, because I'm always working during the middle of the day.
No, I don't mean now.
She probably won't tie for you on Christmas Eve, Derek. Thanksgiving's probably enough.
Yeah.
So for hook wise on this,
Have to make it New Year instead then.
the low water, I'm using a size 2, but it's a steelhead fly. You can tie it whatever size you like, bigger, smaller. Normally I'd pinch the barb first, but I don't have my pliers with me, so generally I pinch the barb before I tie the fly so that if it breaks when I pinch it, I didn't do all that for nothing. Get the focus. So the first little bit we're going to be using white thread. The body is floss, and so I want that white thread underneath it so the floss keeps its color. You can also put tinsel under it. That's another way to do it, especially on a dark hook like this. So I'm going to just strut my thread up on that return eye. And then with this, I'm gonna be a little bit more particular based on my thread flattening out. And this is, gosh, 12-aught thread. No, look, I can't remember. Yeah, it's 12-aught white, but could use 8. This is just what I happen to have. So I am gonna keep spinning my thread so that it flattens out. Reason being is we're gonna have a floss body. So I want it to have as smooth of an underbody as possible. So much of this is more for the tire as opposed to the fish. The fish aren't going to care. Also, when I tie on bigger hooks, I like to put this over the hook point because I have a bad habit of gouging my hand with it. It's just a little silicone earring back. So you can get about 1 million of them for $5 on Amazon. But it just keeps me from bleeding all over everything. So I could use the vise to do this, but I'm trying to be pretty precise on it.
Thanks for the safety note. Plus, it helps you to stop from cutting your thread accidentally.
That also, both. I have this bad habit is I'll jam my finger into it and then it scares me, so I pull it towards me, and so I poke it and slash it, and it just turns into a shit show really fast. For the tag, we're going to be using some oval French tinsel in small, and then some violet floss. I just realized no, I missed a material.
Sorry, Britt, what is the hook? Is it a Daiichi?
It's just an Arex low water.
All right, okay.
It's our 412. Yeah. I mean, you could use Daiichi, you could use a blue heron spay hook, you know. I mean, it's whatever your hook preference is. This is what we have, so what I use.
Now, look very similar to the Daiichi salmon.
They do.
And I say the points on them are deadly. I put one straight through my thumb.
I've done that.
So it's a very good tip, what you're saying with those earrings.
Okay, you're making me laugh now. I can't remember what I was doing. Okay, so I'm gonna try to run most of my materials all the way up the body. That's just to keep that smooth underbody. So this will be our tag, or our tip actually. So I'm just taking flat wraps back. Typically, you don't want it to go much past that barb. And there's certain, some people that think it should be one way versus the other. Ultimately, it's your fly, so do whatever you want with it. So I'm going to put 3 on. I'm going to take a few wraps off. So the main thing with all of these flies is just being very cognizant of the wraps you're putting on and not building up extra without need for it. I'm going to cut this off, and again, I'll just, for now, I'm going to keep it close to where that return eye ends. For the butt, I'm just using violet floss. I do want it to be a little bit thinner, so I'm going to split this. So the floss is multiple strands, so I just use my bobbin to kind of split that. I'm going to take this and just advance our thread, and I want it to go about to just the point, which granted can be hard to see with a little earring back on, but you can use, silk gloves if you want. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm taking 5 wraps right now, and then I'll take 4 off. So take this, and again, you could put a half hitch in and use the vise if you want. These, I tend to just go hand over hand. Oh my goodness. A lot of times you'll see people wearing gloves with the silks. Sometimes they do. If it's a fly to be put in a frame or something, I definitely will. The fishing fly, not so much. So now I'm going to take 4 wraps off, capture that material, and then put a few more back on. You see a little piece of floss that kind of frayed. If you want to, you can burnish floss. So I've just got a burnishing tool here. You can also get little agate ones. So just going to burnish the metal a little, and that just makes it a little bit shinier and also smooths out any imperfections. Same thing with that floss. Just helps kind of smooth it out. However, if you don't have a smooth underbody, your floss, no amount of burnishing is going to help. So that's pretty important. You need to make sure you've got a smooth underbody, or it's still going to turn out like crap. The tail, I'm just going to use just a peacock sword. So I'm going to pull just a few fibers. The actual pattern calls for pheasant crest dyed teal green, which I do not have. So I use these instead, which I really like how this looks, so it's fine by me. I'm gonna just put those in. You don't want to be terribly long. This pattern does come from the Royal Treatment Fly Shop in West Linn, Oregon. It was created by Joel LaFollette back on 1995 on the banks of the Deschutes River for summer steelhead was the plan. Again, I'm going to just trim that, the length of that. You can tell I'm trying to keep all of my materials about the same length, so we'll just incorporate those into the underbody. For the rib, we're going to use just again small gold floss or small gold tinsel and floss. And then for the butt, we're actually going to use peacock curl. Just some more strong peacock curl. And I'm not going to use a ton because it's just literally just the butt of the fly. So it's just this little section. I'm going to start winding those down. We'll attach that peacock curl. I'm going to go ahead and throw a half hitch in. And then again, I'm just going to make a little peacock rope out of that. Loosen that pinching nut. Of course, some of the materials up front got caught up in it. Okay. And then we can just go right into making a foot of that. Tie it off just like we would dubbing loop. You can go in and just trim those out. At this point, I'm just going to kind of wrap this stuff down more so just to keep it out of the way. It's driving me nuts. So I'm just doing some pretty loose spirals. And then I'll just trim off those ends. Again, always spinning the thread, flattening it out. Take our gold tinsel. Gonna pull that under, up, and around so that we capture that on the back side of the hook. Trim that off so it's flush with where that return eye is. We're just trying to fill in that little gap right there. And now for floss, I really like the down and back look. It just helps, I feel like, with better coverage. So I am going to flatten my thread. And we're just going to take wraps to cover all of this up. Is just spinning my thread counterclockwise. Now for this, we're going to have a throat. Of 2 different materials. So we're going to have a throat with a breast feather, a guinea feather, pearl on the top, or sword on the top and bottom. So need to leave a little bit of room up front, but not a ton. That's all pretty tight in. I'm going to take my floss and just going to tie that in. A half hitch in it. And this is where, especially on floss bodies, try to smooth out as best I can. Tighten that tension nut so that it's a controlled spin, not a free spin. I don't like free spinning for most things, unless it's like peacock herl, where that's the whole point of it. And this isn't going to be the smoothest body in the world, but that's okay. So as I go, I'm kind of unwinding that floss so that it's nice and flat and not corded up. If you have a little gap, don't worry too much about it. We'll catch that on the front end of it when we wrap it forward. It's one of the nice things about doing it with the front, front and back technique. Before you start wrapping back up, you can go ahead and burnish it. And again, that just gets, some of those little hills and valleys flattened out. By far not the most perfect body in the world, but gets the point. Fill this part in a little bit. There's a bit of a dip right there. Now we can tie that off. Good burnish. Get any of those little dips and wowies out as best you can. If you don't have a burnishing tool, you can also use like your half hitch, or not your half hitch, your wood finish tool. Anything smooth and metal, smooth, like agate, that sort of thing. Next, we're going to wrap our rib. So you're looking for 5 wraps, 6 coming up. Now at this point, this is where I'm going to switch out to black thread. We have the body done, which was the main thing we were using the white thread for. So I'm just going to tie in my black thread. The others. So from here on out for the throat and all that, we would just be using just black. So for the under hackle, the pattern calls for a filio plume from a pheasant rump in purple spun in a dubbing loop. I don't have one of those, so I'm just using some net soft hackle, and I'm just pulling the fluff off of them and using that in a dubbing loop. And it pretty much just accomplishes the same thing. So here's the feather. I'm just cutting all of that fluff off, and I'll be putting that in a dubbing loop. For the dubbing loop, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I don't know if you follow Rupert Harvey on Instagram, but we're going to use the vise to do it. So with this, I'm going to hook my thread and try to make sure I have the right length. So rather than using like your standard dubbing loop where it's down below, we're actually going to use it over to the side so that we're using our vise to make it. If you can see, I've just attached the thread to that spring, and we'll use the spinning aspect of the vise to make the dubbing loop. So right now I'm just trimming some of that fuzz off of this feather. I really think it'd be easier just to get the filio plumes. The one I have is not quality enough for my taste. It's just really greasy. I need to wash it and clean it up some before I use it. For this, I am going to wax the thread a little bit. So I'll just run that up. Just helps it stay in there a little bit better. I've cut that fiber off and I put it in my clip. Try to turn the camera a little. There we go. So at this point, I'm just going to insert that material into that loop. And then I've got my tension nut wide open. Oh, I guess it would help if I bring my thread over. I'm going to bring my thread over also to the thread post. And we're just going to spin that. So we're pretty much just making like a dubbing loop using this spinning function of the vise. You can do this with feathers like this. Rupert Harvey, gosh, if you watch his YouTube channel, there's just absolute tons of videos of him doing this for entire flies, like game changer type flies. So now that we've got that, I'm going to tighten that back up, and we're just going to make a collar out of this. This is what's going to prop our hackles up. So you want it to be, pretty full. If there's too much, you can always pinch the longer ones out or whatever, but you want it to be quite full. This is what's going to help give it that profile in the water and hold that hackle up. So again, we'll just tie it off just like we would a dubbing loop, because really that's all it is. So we're going to use some purple dyed guinea. This will be the first collar. I try to find one that has the small dots on it, but I'm about out, so this is all just the big dot guinea, which I don't care for. You want it to be fairly long. I like to have it at least going to the hook point. Try to find one with a thin stem that'll help you in the long run. We'll prep it like anything. We'll grab that tip, pull those fibers back. Cut our triangle, so we'll do it again. So we've just cut that little triangle to tie in. Axe the thread good there. Spin it counterclockwise, that way it jumps back. Bind that down. If you want, you can use hackle pliers. If it's long enough, you don't have to. We're going to pull those fibers rearward. And we're going to take a few wraps. Oh, this one probably could have been a little bit longer, but that's okay. Butt end out. Yeah, I guess I would have preferred it to be a little bit longer, but this will be fine. See how that feather, purple feather underneath though is going to prop that hackle up. That's what we're looking for. Next one will be peacock breast feather. I hate using this bird. It's so pretty. I just don't even want to use it. So I just got one feather. I'm just going to strip all that fluff off the bottom of it. And then no different. We'll find the tip of it, pull everything back, and just make a nice tie-in point. So we'll just there we go, tie-in point. Again, I like to wax the thread when I'm doing these. It just helps hold it in. Spin your thread rear anti-clockwise, so it jumps rearward. Same thing, we're just gonna wrap that around a couple of times as a collar. I like this hackle to be longer than the other one. So just as you're wrapping, preen those fibers rearward. Just tie that off. And you can just trim that excess out. Spit's your best friend. Go ahead and just give it a good spit down. Super technical term right there. Next we have, so we're gonna have a wing of sorts on the top and the bottom. So technically a wing and a throat. And it's going to be, again, peacock sword. So for this, I like to find the stuff that's a little bit further down, so I have a little bit more length to work with. And if I can find some that doesn't have a god-awful curve in it, all the better. Sometimes if it's too curved, you might have to find ones from, see if I can find it, so both the same sides, from a right and a left. So go right and left. That way they'll kind of curve together, but if you can find some that's straight enough, you can just go with that. So much of this just comes down to you know, how particular you want to be. So I'm going to try to pull those fibers down for now. The little dose of Scotch spit, because that works best. You want these to go just not quite all the way to the tail. Take a loose wrap and a few binding wraps. Trim those butt ends out. Bottom side, so technically the throat, we're going to do the same exact thing, but they will be shorter. So they won't go quite as far back. And nice thing is I can just invert my vise. So I'm not trying to monkey around with the bottom of it as much. Again, we're just going to take kind of a loose wrap, make sure they're all stayed right on top of the hook shank. Yes, in this case, the bottom of it. So they're, like I said, they're not going to go quite as far back. Trim those butt ends off. So at this point, all we've got left is to put the jungle cock on. So for that, oh look, I even busted out the nice one. If they're fishing flies, I really don't care how nice. So some people like bigger jungle cocks, some people like smaller jungle cock eyes. Whatever floats your boat, you don't have to have them at all. Yeah, that's about right. So there's the jungle cock. To prepare it, I'm gonna just trim these feathers off. And so I've just got little nubbies to tie in. So kind of like that. Just a little bit of fluff on the edges to give it some place for the thread to grab onto. Do that on both sides. Try to make them even. This looks nicer, but most people aren't looking at both sides of your fly at the same time, so oh, that really matters. And we're just gonna tie those in. Make sure they're positioned how you want them. Looks good. And then I'm gonna go in with just a couple. This is where kind of fine point scissors are really nice. You can also use a razor blade. Just be careful if you use a razor blade not to scalp everything. And then go in and just put a little head on that. Some people leave more room in front than others. A lot of people out here like to riffle hitch flies, which makes them skate. I have no idea where my whip finish tool went. Anyways, or you can just, whip finish it by hand if you don't know where your ship went. Yeah, a lot of people will leave more room up front out here on their steelhead flies so you can riffle hitch things. I didn't on this one, but that's certainly a possibility. Just depends on how you like to fish for steelhead. So say this was kind of up and not quite going the way you want it to. You do have the option. We'll go back to one of these straws. You can just spit it up a little bit, give it a spit down, and then just put a straw over it like that for a little bit. Once that spit dries, it'll have that nice flow to it. Once you fish it, it'll have that flow anyways, but it'll, look prettier in your box if you do that. And then I put a few coats of head cement on it, just to make it a little bit safer from the steelhead's teeth. But so that is a royal treatment. Probably my favorite steelhead fly ever. I'm hoping to go out this week and maybe actually catch a steelhead with it. So. Yes, I think is that good, Derek, or do you want me to keep going? That's quite a bit. Oh, you're muted, Derek.
Thanks for giving your time, Britt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Britt.
Britt, thank you very much. Can I ask a favour?
Yeah.
Can you photograph your spring clip?
Yeah.
The hair clip.
No, that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's one your bride's made up, isn't it?
Just made it up. Rupert Harvey's is way fancy and all polished. Ours is a spring.
Yeah, no, that would do me fine. Can you photograph it against a tape or something? Because I get the idea of size.
And you go mess with it a little bit. Like if I use the bigger jaws, this length is a little different, but it's pretty cool to use it.
Yeah, no, I haven't got that. That's an added thing I need.
Way more.
You can get.
What did you use that for?
Pete. Get different size springs, Pete, with a little ring.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to get. I haven't used that. I do it another way. That looked quite cool. Every day's a learning day.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time, Britt, especially on Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you. Has anybody got any other?
Well, I was just asking that thing that you just showed. What did you use that for? I missed that.
I'll do it this way. Since with the big camera on, it might be easier. Just maybe thread. Down below.
Yeah, sorry, I popped out for some coffee when you did that part.
Just need to with the camera. So
Oh, stamina.
Dubbing in, spin it down here. This just moves it up to your thread close. So rather than doing it down here, I can move it up to my thread close. What I find helpful is then it keeps constant tension on it. I'm not having to keep constant tension on it. To put materials in and rearrange them, that's a lot easier. Where if I'm trying to keep tension on it down here, like the normal way you do it, you're trying to keep tension on it and put materials in there, arrange the materials. It all falls to hell and you go through out and you start over. Where having it up there, all I have to worry about is putting the materials in it. And then you're just in that way, you're just using your vise then to spin the bobbin loop as opposed to a different tool down here. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.